Ladies and gentlemen, drivers, gig workers, and everyone in between, welcome to This Week in Rideshare podcast. I'm your host, Jared Hoffa. It is Friday, September 18th, and this week, users pay big for the AV experience. Waymo lands at SFO, and Lyft is testing tipping riders. Like that, LegalRideshare breaks it down. And from LegalRideshare, I'm joined by the co-founder and lead attorney, Brian Green. Bryant, happy Thursday. A little early this week.
Happy Thursday, Jared. Great to be back here. It is a day early, but never a dollar short.
That is absolutely true. I threw some tongue twisters in the open. Lyft testing, I can't even do it now. Lyft testing tipping riders. It's going to be a very
I,
interesting story about it. Trying
I
to.
know. You should have just done it once. You nailed it the first time.
I know, but you do it right. I did it right the first time and then botch it the second. But we got some good stories today. Interesting stuff as always. We're going to jump right into it. This first one cracks me up, and I love it. Tourists are using Waymo as its own paid adventure. And this is from the SF Chronicle, and then reported from February to August, Mihaly booked 10 Waymo tours in which clients would ride the autonomous vehicles to such prominent landmarks as Alamo Square, Twin Peaks, and the Golden Gate Bridge. At 149 for a 3-hour, 3-ride quote-unquote experience, these jaunts became so popular that Mihaly began offering them in LA, Waymo's other flagship market in California. She had 4 Waymo tours on the calendar as of August 18th, the day the self-driving car juggernaut sent a cease and desist letter. Mihaly had, in turn, apparently violated the company's terms and conditions for brand display. Clearly, Waymo's bedrock consumers are the regular commuters who might otherwise hail rides with Uber or Lyft. But some experts say the company would be wise to divert some of its focus to tourists who might pay more money for the thrill of an autonomous ride. So not an angle I was expecting anytime soon, Bryant, but they're literally turning the rides into paid rides.
Yeah,
Pretty wild.
it's very interesting. And I think it just shows the novelty of these vehicles. So people are really excited to start using autonomous cars. In many cities, they don't exist yet. So when there's an opportunity to jump in and tour the city, it's kind of a cool way to do it. So there's obviously people who are looking to cash in. There's entrepreneurs who are always trying to make a buck. And as the article said, I think this is an opportunity for the autonomous vehicle companies to really use the vehicles in a creative way. We're going to get into safety and all that, as we always do when it comes to AVs and robo taxis. But for this particular story, I think it's cool. I don't really have anything else to add other than
Yeah.
why not?
Yeah, I have 2 questions about this article. I don't know if you noticed this, and maybe they explained it elsewhere, but the two things that are interesting is, first off, she's booking these experiences, but we've done stories before that getting a Waymo or any sort of autonomous vehicle is usually a crapshoot. Like even the Waymo app itself, it's hard to really know when you're going to get it, how long it's going to take. So I'm very curious how she was able to get it consistent. That's number one, and then number two, it's interesting because Waymo sent her a cease and desist, but it wasn't for creating this service. It was for brand display. So arguably, she could have, tell me if I'm wrong, but arguably, if she doesn't advertise this, she could technically still do it.
Yeah, I think that Waymo and any other company out there would want to step in and not have people renting out their vehicles outside of their knowledge and outside of their company's, grasp of influence in terms of service and all that, because there's all sorts of liability that come into play when there's this extra level of, business transaction taking place. So whatever the reason cited for shutting this down, I would imagine that the companies are going to find whatever way they need to prevent people from using their vehicles to make money themselves. I think that the companies would be wise to have these tours set up. This is a business idea that they should probably steal, because I do think that it's a way to upcharge particular customers, highlight the technology, use the vehicles in a fun and creative way. they probably just want to do it under their terms of service with their policies, their procedures in place, and ultimately them being the ones who are cashing in as opposed to random other people doing it on their time.
Yeah, and yeah, I imagine that, like you said, I think they're catching them on this sort of season. That's the area they have in their terms. I'm sure they're going to update their terms if they haven't already to probably prevent people from doing this in the future. But yeah, very very interesting article. Expanded again, like you said, the novelty has not worn off. People were paying good money to sit in the back of a Waymo. So interesting, very interesting. So we're going to jump on to the second story here. Pretty inevitable, but big news either way. Waymo has officially landed at SFO, and this is from sf.gov, and they explain, quote, Mayor Daniel Lurie today announced that the San Francisco International Airport, also known as SFO, has signed a testing and operations pilot permit for autonomous vehicles with Waymo, allowing the company to begin operating at the airport. Operations will be rolled out in 3 phases, including testing the vehicles with a human driver, testing vehicles without a human driver with Waymo and airport employees, and eventually beginning commercial operations. The permit allows Waymo to access portions of the airport to test and pilot these AV operations on designated roads and property, and will be rolled out in 3 phases, as I mentioned. The pilot permit follows a comprehensive reviewing process, including safety protocols and data reporting requirements. Under the terms of the agreement, Waymo will operate within strict safety and reporting conditions to ensure dependable service from trips to and from SFO. So this is a big leap. SFO is obviously a huge airport. This is literally straight from the government website explaining the process. I will say there's a few things that stand out here that I think is really great. 1, this is a slow roll. 2, it's being done in phases. 3, which Brian, you have discussed in length on other shows that we've done, they are being told they have to report, data reporting, which most of these companies don't do, and then also have to follow the rules and regulations of the airport. So given all these factors, I think if you're going to do it, this is the way to do it.
Yeah, I would agree with that. So this is inevitable. The fact that we're talking about the autonomous vehicles at the airports. I mean, of course, they're going to be at the airports. If they're welcome in the cities and the cities are letting them operate on the main city streets, the airports are not a far leap from that, and obviously an area of high traffic and high desirability for people using rideshare type cars. So I do appreciate that they're doing it in a slow, kind of controlled manner. We've talked over and over about the fact that I don't think these cars are ready. I think that the technology isn't quite there to do this safely. But if you're going to do it, if you're San Francisco and you're letting them roam around your city, then this is the next step, and you might as well do it in this this slow roll. As you mentioned, the data reporting, indicating when there are safety issues, indicating when there are near misses, sharing data about the rides themselves. That's imperative. And that's what we've talked about over and over, that cities need to do when these companies come to town. We cannot find ourselves in another situation like we did with Uber and Lyft, where the cities are left reacting to whatever the companies have done and however they've rolled out their business. Like in these types of scenarios where we're changing the way that the technology and transportation infrastructure are run, the cities need to be in charge, not the companies. And the fact that we're seeing San Francisco take the lead, that we're seeing them require certain safety features, certain reporting mechanisms, like that's good. Are learning from past mistakes. And if you're going to put these cars on the road, well, you might as well be the ones controlling the way the companies operate. So, I can give them credit there, although I wish that the cars weren't on the road in the first place.
Yeah, which actually, hot off the chat right now, we got Rideshare Rodeo that has just commented saying, "Way no." I love that. I'm going to start using that. And also chimed in saying, Brian, you're 100% correct on, your response to this article and what's going on. Yeah, it's obviously, I don't think it's going to be smooth sailing. we've seen these things, especially when there's a lot of them. That's the thing that at least I've noticed in a lot of these articles. It's when there's these one-offs or it's individual Waymos, they seem to do okay in these areas. As soon as you get a bunch of them, is like when you heard about that story when the Waymos were beeping at each other and gridlocking each other. So once you have a bunch of Waymos at an airport, which already has a zillion cars in it, we'll see how they respond to it. But again, ultimately it is inevitable. It's going to come here one way or the other. And SFO is saying, look, let's try to work together and make it happen. Versus what Uber and Lyft did and just said, well, we're doing it anyways, and we're not sharing any data with you. So in some ways, it's better. And then heading off to our final story, which is a good one, I think, for drivers. And this is in testing phase, but I like what Lyft is thinking about here. They're going to let drivers know if their rider tips. Now, this is from Bloomberg, and they reported, quote, Lyft is testing a feature that will tell drivers how often a rider tips, how punctual they are, providing additional information drivers can use when deciding which trips are worth their time. Lyft drivers typically decide whether to accept a passenger based on information such as what the trip pays, time and distance to the pickup and drop off, and the rider's rating. But the company is now also showing what they say, quote, rider tipped on X% of rides, and rider is usually ready at pickup. This is quoting from a screenshot shared by a Boston-based driver on X. Lyft is testing the feature with a limited number of drivers, the spokesperson said in response to this inquiry, and said the company will gather data and community feedback before deciding on a broader rollout. So again, Lyft is sort of setting the benchmark here for being kind of pro-driver in some of these tests and saying, hey, we're gonna give you some crumbs and see if this makes drivers happy. But ultimately, I think it's a good thing.
Yeah. No, I think that it is a good thing for drivers. The more information that they have, the better decisions that they can make about how to run their business. Uber and Lyft continually say that the drivers are independent contractors, that they are not employees, that we give them all this independence. And in a lot of ways, that just really hasn't been true. The company has kept tight control over drivers, has dictated a lot of the way that this work goes. And by giving drivers this additional information, they're actually taking a step towards independence. They're allowing the drivers to take information, take data points, and make decisions about, is this a ride that I want? Is this a ride that's going to benefit me? Or is this one that I can pass on and maybe try for something better? So I think that giving drivers this sort of information gives them power, and that's ultimately a good thing. I will say that there was one thing that just kind of stuck with me about this tipping feature. I do think that there's going to be a lot of riders who are not able to get rides as quickly if they have not had a culture of tipping. And I will say, I think you should tip every ride. That when you are engaged as a rideshare passenger, when you're part of this industry, the drivers are providing a service, and a tip is something that should be automatic. That said, the companies have often relied on customers to supplement the low pay that they provide to drivers. So the companies have kept driver pay low and then have said, hey, passengers, why don't you tip to help get your drivers up to a more livable wage? To pass that burden of pay onto the customer, the companies should be paying the drivers what their time is worth, what the market would dictate is a livable wage. And it should not be passed solely on to the passenger. So I'm concerned that this is one more step that the companies are taking to minimize what they pay drivers and force the customers to supplement that driver's income just to make enough money to get by. All that said, tip your driver. They're doing a hell of a job out there. I think this is good information for the drivers to have. But I just think that there might be something else going on here that benefits the company when we talk about nudging passengers to tip more.
Yeah, I mean, that's a really good point. I never really thought of it that way because now, I mean, and you're right, though, because as soon as I read this article, the first thing that went through my head is like, man, am I tipping drivers enough? And, like me personally, is this going to affect the rides that I take? Because what if, if this, because again, they don't really tell you what the rating system is. They're just saying, hey, you're tipping. What if it turns out that I'm not tipping high enough compared to other people in my area? Does that mean that I'm not going to get a ride now? So you're right. Again, it's the company's throwing the burden on everyone else but themselves. It's kind of what they're notorious for. But I still think, as you said, this is still a good thing. And I think weirdly enough, these things should have existed day one on the platforms, on both platforms. The whole point of independent work and independent contractors is it's independent. You can determine, what you want to do and how you want to run your business. And you can't do that if they're hiding things. So ultimately, I think all of that is good, but you're right. And again, this is a test. And we have seen in the past, Lyft tests things out and then shut them down for a while or shut them down completely. So we do not know if this is going to officially pass the green light ultimately, but if anyone has this that's watching the show, I would love to hear about it. It appears to be at least in Boston right now. So if any Boston drivers are watching, I'd love to hear from you and see what's going on. But that being said, those are the stories for this week. And of course, Bryant, I will give you the final say before we head into the weekend.
We just always remind everybody that Legal Rideshare is available for free consultations. If you ever find yourself injured on the job, whether it's an accident, a slip and fall, a dog bite, you name it, we can help you with that claim. We can help you recover things like the cost of medical treatment, lost wages, pain and suffering, and any other damage that you sustain. Visit us at LegalRideshare.com. That's got all of our contact information, and it's the easiest way to get in touch.
Thank you, Bryant. And as I like to say, that is the end of This Week in Rideshare. See you next week.